Hello everyone, it's Mike. Hope you're all doing well. Today is May 16th, 2017. It's been a while since I've done a video. Between a lot going on and just questionable weather and just not being in the mood to do videos, haven't made one in a while. But yeah, as you can see, spring is beginning to transition into summer, and I am loving that, as I'm sure the rest of you are. Especially anyone living in a snow belt. That is a glorious thing to celebrate. So I'm out for my walk. And I don't know what reminded me of this, but I was reminded of how I first got turned on to my favorite band, Rush. I've got a lot of Rush fans on Facebook. A lot of my friends aren't Rush fans, so if that's not your trip, you may want to go move on to something else, because I'm going to talk about Rush. But it's a kind of a semi-amusing story. I'm going to rewind the clock back to about 77 or 78. There was a guy I used to hang out with. He used to vacation near us every summer. He was a couple years older than me, and he was from Toronto. He had a heavy Toronto accent. I wish I could do a Toronto accent, because I would really do this story justice if I could imitate some of the things he was saying. But back about 77, 78, the big thing on the radio and the big thing everybody was listening to was Kiss. And I was too, and so was my brother and most of our friends, and that was the big deal. And so he was over one day and we got to talking about music and say, oh yeah, Kiss is what we've been listening to, boy, it's a big deal. Yeah, it's kick-ass stuff, boy. And so he's said, Kiss is no good. There's this sense, I wish I could do a Toronto accent, but there's this sensational band out of Toronto, and they could kiss his ass. I can't do a Toronto accent. I wish I could, because it was funny to hear him go on a rant about how amazing Rush is in that Toronto accent. And he was a great guy and a great friend. He was also a bit of a bullshitter, so I'm like, yeah, whatever. But he was going on about Rush, and I'd heard the name. Anyone who used to read magazines back in that day, you probably remember those record club ads. You can get, I don't know, half a dozen or a dozen albums for $1, and you have to buy more albums within the next 3 years or something. I used to look at those ads, and that's where I would see Rush album covers, and so I'd seen the name. I hadn't really heard much about them, but I was aware of them. And I was like, yeah, whatever, dude, you know. So that was pretty much it, until a couple of years later, listening to the radio, Spirit of Radio from the Permanent Waves album, that started to get a lot of radio play. I think that was probably one of their first songs to really get significant airplay and really kind of break through for them commercially. They were already a significant band by then, but as far as commercial airplay, that's, I think, the song that did it, or at least for me, that's the first I ever really were hearing them. And about the same time, I was learning how to play the drums. So as part of that, I'd be listening to the radio and whatever albums, trying to listen to other drummers and hear what they're doing and trying to wrap my mind around it and looking for inspiration, looking for innovative things to try. And so Spirit of Radio comes on, and I'm like, what the F is that? Son of a bitch. And if you listen to the intro of Spirit of Radio, it's like drumming on a whole other level. And it was blowing my mind. I was like, what the hell is that? And I every time I'd hear it on the radio, I'd crank it up and, really study it and listen to it and be blown away by it. So, of course, I had to buy the album, and I did. And the way that played out is, I would just listen to that one song, because that's the song I was familiar with on the radio. And after the song was done, the album would go through the rest of the songs, and I'm just kind of like, okay, I'm not sure how I feel about this, but just let it play out. And after a few plays, maybe more than a few plays, it started to grow on me. And I think that's the way it is for a lot of people who aren't Rush fans, because it is odd. They use an odd time sense, and the vocals aren't for everyone, and very complex musically. The arrangements are very busy and a lot going on. And even for a seasoned Rush fan, you get a new album or something, it takes a few listens, sometimes even more than that, to be able to wrap your mind around it. And that's what was happening. But because I liked that one song so much, I'd play it and then let the rest of the album play through, and it really started to grow on me. And it wasn't long before I was like, wow, Rush is my favorite band. And that was like 1980. And you know, it's been no turning back. That's been my favorite band ever since. So now I've been turned on to Permanent Waves, that album. What do I do next? Things were very different from today. Today, if I uncover a new band or new to me band, you know, I can look on YouTube, or, you know, there's ways I can find recordings and live footage, and there's ways I can kind of further my exploration of that band. Well, that wasn't the case back then. I didn't have any of the Rush albums, and so I started talking about it with some of my friends at school, and there weren't many people who'd heard of them, and among the people who had heard of them, even fewer were into them. But there was a small handful of people who that was the case, and one of my buddies, I'll give him a shout out right here and right now, he's one of my friends on Facebook. He was in my class, Mr. Ralph Bowman. He was a fellow Rush fan, and he was talking about how he had 2112 on vinyl and how it was definitely worth a listen. And anyone who's a fan of that band and that album knows that 2112 is very much worth a listen. So he said, you know, if you bring me a blank cassette, I'll put it on that cassette for you. And I brought him a cassette the next day, and the next day he brought me the cassette back with 2112 on it. And I remember it was springtime, sitting out on the porch with the cassette player going and having my first 2112 experience. And man, that changed everything. That was amazing. Thank you, Ralph, for that, by the way. That was a significant moment. And from then, it wasn't long after that, of course, you know, the moving pictures came out, and I started, when I had a little money here and there, I'd pick up some of their albums. They'd already had probably 7 or 8 or 9 albums out, so started buying their albums here and there and growing the collection. And there's been no turning back ever since. Favorite band. And I don't know if I've talked about this, but my two favorite bands, I'm switching subjects now, sort of, are Rush and the Beatles. And the thing I say about them is Rush is the best band ever, the Beatles are the greatest band ever. And the reason I say Rush is the best band ever is, as far as contemporary, you know, pop, rock, any of that kind of music, I've not found a band with a higher level of musicianship or lyrics. If it existed, I'd be talking about them instead of Rush. But they're not radio friendly. They're very much a niche band. They're not for everyone. So they did not achieve the level of greatness as far as touching society, changing society, impacting society as the Beatles did. And that's why I say that the Beatles are the greatest band ever. Did the Beatles have a high level of musicianship, high level of lyrics? Extremely high. Compare them with Rush. Sorry if you're a Beatles fan, but no contest. Rush kicks their ass on every level except commerciality and being radio friendly and making an impact on society. No band that I'm aware of has touched or moved or impacted society in the way the Beatles have, before or since, that I'm aware of, in my experience. And the Beatles had an amazing collection of songs, amazing catalog of songs. And a lot of bands, you'll have 1 or 2 good songs on the album. The rest is kind of like filler and kind of borderline songs. There weren't very many songs like that in the Beatles catalog. Just about every one of them was a masterpiece, and that's impressive. And as much as I like the complexity and the musicianship of Rush, there is something to be said for the songsmith ability, I don't know if I'm saying that right, of the Beatles. Their ability to craft a song in a very tight, concise way, have a really tight, concise message, and be tight and concise musically. Maybe a higher level of refinement than Rush. But yeah, so for my money, those are the best band ever and the greatest band ever. If you are a Rush fan and or a Beatles fan, love to hear you weigh in. I'm sure the folks that are fans of one band and not the other will have a lot to say about the band that they're not a fan of, but that's cool. I like to start a conversation. So that's pretty much it. Hope you're all having a great day, enjoying your springtime. Look at all these dandelions. Isn't it crazy? Yeah. All right, guys. Have a great day. We'll catch you on the other side.